For about 10 years of my secular career, I spent that time working as a director over a department in a pretty large hospital. And over that time, I had the opportunity to hire people for select roles and positions. Of course, I wanted the best people for the job, but I didn't only look at their resumes. I wanted to talk to them, find out what they were passionate about, and look at the intangible qualities that they brought to the job. Sometimes I might decide not to hire the obvious or what other people would consider the most qualified candidate in favor of someone who I saw potential and passion. Jesus didn't look for the most eloquent or the most learned people when he chose his disciples. In fact, he picked a pretty motley crew. Fishermen, tax collectors, thieves. These people wouldn't have made the cut with any Fortune 500 company. But these men had passion. They were loyal, and they were faithful. Who cares if they graduated from Harvard or Oxford or any other university? Jesus was looking for men who would believe in him and in his words. He wanted men who would fight for him and follow him, no matter how hard the teachings were. In our gospel today, Jesus sent the disciples out 2 by 2 and empowered them to drive out unclean spirits and to heal the sick. He had them go to different towns to preach the word and to heal. He empowered them with authority that before only Jesus himself had. These men who had no other qualifications other than that Jesus himself chose them to follow him. You know, there's a saying that goes, Jesus doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called. Jesus called these men to go out and spread the gospel and to establish his church. He gave them whatever powers they needed to accomplish their goals. He gave them faith so that they would rely on the Holy Spirit to guide and inspire them. We hear another story from the book of Amos this morning. Amos really was an interesting character. He was a man who said what he meant and didn't sugarcoat things. When Amaziah tried to kick Amos out of Bethel for preaching to the people, Amos told him that he was not a prophet, but rather had been a shepherd and a dresser of sycamores. But he had been called by God to prophesy to the people of Israel. Amos was also a man who didn't have many people skills or qualifications for preaching, but God saw that Amos was faithful, and he called him to be a prophet despite his lack of experience. You know, God has this way of empowering people who are otherwise unqualified. The most important qualification for being a prophet or an apostle or an evangelizer is that that person have faith. Jesus told his apostles that faith can move mountains. And if one has faith the size of a mustard seed, that he or she can tell that mountain to move from here to there, and it will obey. We may not have the qualifications of a theologian or a Bible scholar, but if we have faith, each one of us can move mountains. We can be God's instrument in changing our world. If we have faith, we can be that change agent that transforms our families or our communities or our parish. And it's not about what words we say or what extreme knowledge we have. It's about our reliance on the Holy Spirit to empower us, just as Jesus empowered his apostles. With faith, we can help others find Jesus. We can help them find healing, and we can be that instrument of God that may help them bring them to salvation. What keeps us from answering God's call to service? Do we hear God's call and maybe think that we're not worthy or that we don't have the abilities or the qualifications to serve? Just like Amos and the apostles, God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called. We may have a certain gift that we think might be insignificant, but to someone else, it might make all the difference in the world. We may not be able to heal illnesses, but we can be there for others to help them heal from the illnesses of guilt, of despair, and of doubt. All it takes is for a person to be open to receiving God's gifts and be willing to share their faith with another person, for them to become a faithful servant or a prophet or an apostle. God truly calls each of us and gives us particular gifts that we can choose to share that will bring healing to others. We just have to be open and willing to take that first step. When Jesus sent the apostles out, he told them not to take anything with them, but to rely on the generosity of those in the towns to provide food and shelter. They trusted Jesus and went out 2 by 2. This is very important because these men supported each other and became a team, so to speak. It gave them additional power and confidence. Consequently, Jesus assures us that we also are not alone in this mission. We have the church to support us in our journey. We are never alone because we have each other. By virtue of our baptism and by all of the other sacraments, we have been gifted the title of priest, prophet, and king. We have already received the power and the gifts that we need to succeed in helping others in their healing and in helping them to build their faith. We just need to be open to using those gifts and to sharing our God-given faith with others.